Welcome back to the show. Today we're going to show you how to use the Mamiya 7 II. This is a medium format camera rangefinder made by Mamiya, and it's 6x7, shoots 120 film or 220 if you can find some, and it's battery dependent. It's electronic, so this is not a mechanical camera. Okay, so let's start with the basics of the camera. First thing, we're going to start from the bottom, which is always the easiest. We have the battery cover here, and it uses an 4LR44 or 4SR44, which goes in this one. And there's multiple little things to put your coin, but it's this one that's on the grip. This one is for the roll that goes in here. Then we have a few other things here on the bottom, but I'd rather show you a little later. Here we have the tripod mount, we have a few other things like I said, and then we go to the other side. So on the top here, we have hot shoe. It has flash sync at all speeds because this is a leaf shutter inside the lens. So the shutter is in the lens, not in the body. We have the shutter dial here, which basically has all the shutter speeds if you go manual, and then you have auto exposure lock, which means you can point to something, half click, recompose, and shoot for the light meter. And then you have automatic exposure, so basically aperture priority, and then you have to choose obviously your f-stop here. It doesn't do a fully automatic. And then, like I said, manual. You can go to 500th of a second all the way down to bulb. And it is battery dependent, so if you're shooting bulb, you're going to have, you know, enough battery for 10, 30, 40 seconds, minutes, whatever you need. Then we have the ISO dial here, which we have to lift the outside crown and turn. So as you can see, now we are 800, now we are at 400 or 320. And then we have a button on the middle, which basically unlocks the different settings. So once you're in the normal manual speeds, it will click normally, as you can see. But when we get to aperture lock, it kind of clicks in. So you have to change. So for manual, all are clicky, and when you go to the aperture priority lock and aperture priority normal, then you have to press the button to turn it, which is to not get out of that mode. Then what do we have here? We have the advance lever. So when you're shooting the picture, you just have to advance to the next frame. And do me a favor, and everybody that owns these cameras, when you shoot, advance and help it come back. Don't release directly, because that releasing like that will hit it, and yes, it was made like that, but it will end up breaking. There's not a lot of spares, so make sure to do that. Then you have your on off. So this is off, this is on. Of course, it's a battery dependent camera. Keep it off if you can, but it does kind of like self shut down after a few minutes. And then we have exposure compensation, which is this little button on the front that you can see here, just on top of the Mamiya 7 logo. And this will let you do -2 and +2 exposure compensation if you're shooting backlit or front lit things or subjects. Then we go to the front of the camera. We have the self timer basically, and the little light here. So if you want to take a self timer, you would press here and it would go dee 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 dee, and then it takes a picture if you want to take selfies or similar, or don't have a cable release. Then you have the rangefinder window and the rangefinder viewfinder. So this is the window for the rangefinder focusing, and this is for basically the frame lines. So this middle one. Mamiya on the side here. On the bottom, you see a cable release socket, so you can screw on your cable release. You have a PC sync port that's covered here. Let me take off this plastic little thing. This probably gets lost second time you take it off, but mine's still here. And here we have on the other side the lens release. So we basically press this, turn the lens sideways. It won't let me turn it. Won't let me turn it without closing the curtain. So this camera has the option to change lenses, but the lenses have to be changed with an internal shutter curtain closed. It's not exactly a shutter as in taking pictures shutter. It's more like a light proof shutter, like a dark slide. So you have to lift this little lever, turn this all the way, put it down, and now it should let me release the lens. As you can see, now it lets me do it, and you can actually see the curtain there. It's hard to see with the video lights, but the curtain is in there. You don't want to be touching anything. Electrical contacts for transmission of information with the lens, and the lens itself. So let's put it back. We have a white dot here and a white dot on the body. So we put the lens inside and turn it clockwise till we hear a click. Now we could go ahead and open the basically that shutter, dark slide shutter here, internal shutter that opens there, and we're ready to basically take pictures. We would need to load film, which I'll leave the link to the video on loading film. So how to use this camera? Very simple. You have aperture here. Okay, so we have full clicks, so 5.6 f4, but you can choose an intermediate. The camera doesn't mind, and you can actually see the shutter on the inside of the lens, not here, but through the other side, because it's always closed. So it's a leaf shutter. It's always closed, rangefinder style, so there's no light coming through. The light meter is strange on this camera because it changes depending on the lens. So I'm not 100% sure if the light meter is in the viewfinder or through the lens, but something here changes with the lens you use. So make sure when you're going to change lenses and you want to know where the light meter is actually metering, it's quite punctual, like almost like a spot meter depending on what lens you use. But make sure you basically look at a light bulb and move your camera and find where the sweet spot is for the light meter in this camera. It's not a whole average light meter situation with this camera. Then we go to the side. We have strap lugs here. This one has for vertical hanging and also horizontal. The Mamiya 7.1 only had for vertical ones. I rather like the one that lets you hold it like a normal camera. Then on the back, we have the multi-exposure button, which is a new feature of the Mamiya 7.2, and the viewfinder where we look through, but also has a little basically diopter drop-ins. These are really rare to find. Please, if you have one, don't lose it. And then a little memo for the 120 film, which changes if you do 120 or 220, because you see this number here would change. On the inside, there's nothing but the strap here. And yeah, basically to use it, it's very simple. You just have to choose the aperture you want. You can focus with the lens. Like I said, it's rangefinder, so the lens, you're not seeing what goes through. Minimum focus is a meter, which some people think it's not enough. I think it's fine for the Mamiya 7 rangefinder. And then you have here the hyperfocal depth of field scale. So if you're shooting like at f8, like we are now, we would be shooting something like 2 meters to 3 meters would be in focus. If we're shooting at f16, we would have here like 2 meters to almost infinity. So you can use that for depth of field and basically hyper focusing, hyper scale. You know what I mean, guys. Then what else do we have in this camera? One thing, like I said, the lens hood that goes here, and it actually collapses backwards. So you can actually collapse it backwards to take it on a trip or in a bag, and you have the lens here. And then there's a 65, which is here. We have the 80, we have a 50, a 43, a 150, 210. 210 is not rangefinder coupled. You need an external viewfinder made to basically take pictures of mountains from a different mountain. So yeah, basically this is simple. You just have to go ahead and find the sweet spot. And it does have a cut through on the lens hood. So you make sure you know where you're putting it. I never get it right. This camera drives me crazy with the lens hood, so don't judge me on that one. But yeah, basically cutout should be where you're looking through. So when you're looking through the lens, you see. Then to open the back door, we basically have this button. We can open it. And when we're in the back, I'm going to close the shutter just so you see. You see now we see the lens. If I turn this, there's the internal shutter. Not a photography shutter like a shutter speed, but an internal baffle to basically that. And if I release it, it goes back to where it has to be. We have our inner spool, which we click here and click here, and then we can remove it, put it on the other side, do the usual for 120. Then from 120 to 220, what we do is we have our pressure plate that we just have to spin. So we spin it for 220 and 135. This camera can take 135 film. There's a special gizmo that goes in there. And to shoot at 120, which is what I always shoot, we just keep it there. Once we load our film, we align it with a little arrow here, and we can start shooting. One thing we need to remember is the camera doesn't know what ISO, so we have to set that on the light meter, and then we're ready to go. Turn it on, and when we turn it on, if we are in aperture exposure, basically when we half press it, we will see the shutter speed that we want. If it's overexposing, it will probably blink, and if it's underexposing, it'll show the bottom, and you might want to change the light settings or aperture or anything, ISO if you can, and so on. If you are in the normal manual settings, you will basically have an indication of what shutter speed you have, and then a blinking light for the recommended one for the scene. Do remember the light meter is very, spotty, so you don't want to always trust the perfect light meter. I usually use an external light meter and decide myself. But I have trusted this camera with exposure lock many times without any issue. So yeah, basically that's how we use it. It doesn't collapse like its sister friend or daughter, like mother, the Mamiya 6, but that's how it works. Flash sync here. This is basically that's pretty much all there is to the Mamiya 7. It's an amazing camera. The price of it is reflected nowadays. Very lightweight, but pretty well built. The plastic is quite brittle, especially on the bottom. This part always breaks. But yeah, remember the battery. It needs a battery. Remember to push that little button that I never push. And that's about all you need to know to use it. If you have any questions about how to use a Mamiya 7, if you're new to the system, if you're having issues, let me know in the comments below. This is my third one. Hopefully won't sell this one. But yeah, it's an amazing camera, and I really enjoy it. The system, all the lenses are stellar, especially the 43, 65, and the 80. But you just got to choose which one you like. But yeah, that's all you need to know about the Mamiya 7 basically to start enjoying it. I hope that this video helped you, and if you have any questions, let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one. Bye.